Could Benjamin Netanyahu really face trial over Israel's war in Gaza? On the 21st of November 2024, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister, alleging systematic human rights abuses. However, while the decision has been warmly welcomed by many, it's been roundly rejected by Israel and the United States. So, what exactly has Netanyahu been charged with, and just how likely is it that we'll ever see the Israeli leader brought before the court? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Kerr-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security and statehood. There was a time when war crimes essentially went unpunished. For most of human history, marauding armies often acted with impunity, carrying out attacks on people and property with few, if any, consequences. Retribution, if it came, was usually at the hands of the opposing side, assuming it won. However, things began to change in the mid to late 19th century. Following efforts to codify the conduct of conflict during the American Civil War, the 1899 and 1907 Hague Conventions laid the foundations of what we now call international humanitarian law by outlining the humane treatment of prisoners and civilians. The problem was that enforcement mechanisms were weak and violations often went unpunished. Indeed, the idea of war crimes trials didn't emerge until after the First World War, when the Treaty of Versailles called on the trial of German and Turkish leaders. But while a few German commanders were prosecuted at the Leipzig war trials, the process was criticised for being overly lenient, as most of those tried were either acquitted or received light sentences. Likewise, efforts to try Ottoman Turkish commanders for their role in the Armenian genocide largely failed due to efforts by the new Turkish nationalist government to shield the perpetrators from prosecution. But while these early attempts to try war crimes were largely ineffective, they were nevertheless crucial in laying the foundations and frameworks for later efforts. The breakthrough would come after the Second World War. The Nuremberg trials, held in 1945 and 1946, saw 22 leading Nazi military and civilian leaders prosecuted for a range of crimes, including crimes against peace, war crimes and crimes against humanity. While 19 were convicted, leading to 10 executions, the rest received prison sentences ranging from 10 years to life. Meanwhile, the Tokyo trials between 1946 and 1948 put 28 leading Japanese figures on trial for similar offences, resulting in 25 convictions, 7 executions and prison sentences ranging from 7 years to life. However, while both trials highlighted the need for a more systematic approach to war crimes, no progress was made during the Cold War. Instead, the next major step came in the 1990s with the wars in the Balkans and the genocide in Rwanda. In 1993, the UN Security Council established the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the ICTY. Lasting until 2017, the court indicted 161 individuals for war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide. Of these, 90 were convicted, 19 acquitted, and 37 cases were dismissed or withdrawn, often due to the deaths of the defendants. Similarly, the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, the ICTR, created in 1994 and lasting until 2015, indicted 96 individuals for their roles in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, which claimed around 800,000 lives. Of these, 62 were convicted, 14 acquitted, and 10 cases were referred to national courts. Another example was the Special Court for Sierra Leone, which saw the first conviction of a former head of state for war crimes. And it was against this backdrop that momentum grew for an established body to tackle future cases. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please do consider giving it a like and perhaps subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. It all really helps. Thanks so much, and now back to the video. In 1994, the United Nations General Assembly tasked the International Law Commission with drafting a statute for a permanent court to try those accused of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. In June 1998, representatives from 160 countries gathered in Rome to discuss the principles, structure and jurisdiction of the new International Criminal Court, the ICC. On the 17th of July 1998, 120 countries adopted the Rome Statute. However, and crucially, around 70 UN members opposed the new court. In addition to 3 permanent members of the Security Council, the United States, Russia and China, many other states refused to sign the statute, including countries such as Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Israel. While the statute was undoubtedly a milestone, it nevertheless needed to be ratified by 60 countries before it came into effect. This was eventually reached on the 1st of July 2002. As a result, the court was set up in The Hague, which remains its base to this day. Since then, the ICC has become an increasingly important international institution. With an annual budget of around $200 million, it's so far initiated 31 cases and issued arrest warrants for 46 individuals. While most of these cases have so far been centred on Africa, the court has also opened investigations into other countries and regions, including Georgia, Bangladesh, Burma and Venezuela. And most recently, it's become increasingly ambitious, taking on higher profile and more controversial targets. In March 2023, the court even issued an arrest warrant for the Russian President Vladimir Putin for the unlawful deportation of children from Ukraine. Then, on the 21st of November 2024, it issued a warrant for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. So what exactly has he been charged with? Alongside former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, Netanyahu faces accusations of war crimes and crimes against humanity related to the war in Gaza. Focusing on the Israeli blockade, which has heavily restricted the flow of food, medicine, fuel and other essential supplies into the territory, the judges argued that there were reasonable grounds to believe that the Israeli Prime Minister had used starvation as a weapon of war. Moreover, both as a direct perpetrator and acting with others, he stands accused of crimes against humanity by intentionally directing attacks against civilians. Of course, the decision to issue the warrants, which also included a demand for the arrest of a senior Hamas commander, has provoked strong reactions. Unsurprisingly, Israel, which isn't a member of the ICC and doesn't recognise its jurisdiction, has rejected the warrant. Denying the accusations made against him, Netanyahu has called the ICC's actions politically motivated and insisted that they're part of a broader campaign of anti-Semitic hatred towards Israel. The move was also strongly condemned by the Israeli president. Likewise, the United States has condemned the warrant. In a statement issued following the news, President Biden called the decision outrageous. Another voice that strongly supported Israel is Hungary. Although it's a signatory to the Rome Statute, its government has said that the decision was shameful and absurd and disgraced the court. In contrast, many other countries have welcomed the decision. Notably, it's been greeted with considerable support across the Muslim world, even by countries that don't accept the court's jurisdiction, including Turkey and Iran. But most other countries have taken a far more cautious approach, neither overtly welcoming nor condemning the decision. For many, the main problem centres on the requirements that signatories to the Rome Statute arrest people wanted by the court. This has put many states, especially European countries, in a very tight spot. Some, such as Ireland and Spain, have indicated that they will comply with the ICC's mandate, affirming their commitment to international law. Likewise, after initially avoiding the issue, the British government later clarified that it would have no choice but to arrest Netanyahu if he did visit Britain. However, the British Foreign Secretary has also stated that he will still be willing to talk to the Israeli Prime Minister. This stands in contrast to France. While it at first suggested that it would be willing to comply with the arrest warrant, it's now backtracked, arguing that Netanyahu, as the leader of a country that isn't a party to the Rome Statute, is immune from arrest, a decision that sparked considerable outrage. Meanwhile, the German government, while expressing respect for the ICC, has not confirmed whether it would enforce the arrest warrants, citing the unique historical relationship it has with Israel. So, will Netanyahu ever be arrested, let alone face trial? For now, it seems highly unlikely. First, and again, Israel isn't a signatory to the Rome Statute. Tied to this, it argues that the ICC has no jurisdiction in the Israel-Palestine conflict. Although Palestine is a state party to the Rome Statute, thus granting the court jurisdiction over alleged crimes committed in Palestinian territories, Israel disputes this jurisdiction, arguing that Palestine isn't a sovereign state. But while none of this prevents the court from having issued the warrants, it does mean that Israel is highly unlikely to cooperate with the ICC. This includes extraditing Netanyahu or other officials for prosecution. Secondly, even if Israel refuses to cooperate, the ICC relies on member states to carry out arrests. As noted, this means that Netanyahu could potentially be arrested if he travels to any of the 125 countries that are a party to the Rome Statute. But just how many countries would be willing to actually carry out the warrant? Many might hold back from acting due to political or diplomatic concerns. Then again, rather than test their resolve or put them in a difficult position, the Israeli Prime Minister might instead choose to avoid travelling to these countries in future. Although, as Putin's September 2024 visit to Mongolia showed, some signatories might still be willing to accept the Israeli Prime Minister. Indeed, the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has already extended an invitation to his Israeli counterpart. But aside from limiting the Israeli leader's travel options, it could also have other impacts. For example, it could mean that few other leaders would want to be seen to be meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister, thus deepening Israel's growing diplomatic isolation. Meanwhile, the effects will continue to be felt in the future. Netanyahu will be severely constrained on where he can travel even after leaving office. Nevertheless, while practical and political obstacles make it unlikely that Netanyahu will face arrest or trial anytime soon, if ever, many would also argue that the decision to issue the arrest warrant represents a significant symbolic step in the development of international law. Not least of all because it shows that the court is willing to go against high-profile Western-aligned leaders. However, for others, especially in the United States, the decision to issue the arrest warrant will be seen as a political stunt that further undermines the standing and legitimacy of the ICC. In the meantime, aside from the legal questions, the issuing of the arrest warrant will present a very practical political challenge for many countries, especially in Europe. But what do you think? Was issuing the arrest warrant the right decision or not? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.